Hi, folks. Welcome back to Thoroughly Enjoyed Life. Today is a really exciting, really special live show. As you can tell by the title, it is all about my new poetry collection. This collection has been in the making for the last year or so, and I'm just really proud of it and that it's finally here. So, we are going to have a little discussion, a little chat, maybe answer some questions about how it's all been like making it and things like that. So let's get to it. I just need to check it's working. Is it working? Yeah, it's working. Okay, so let's get going. Let me show you my collection. I'm really annoyed with the way that Amazon publishing works because you can't get a finished copy of your book until it's been released. So I only have an ARC, which obviously has this across it, but I'm still very happy to have a physical copy in my hands. So this is Money Doesn't Love You. It's actually my third collection. I've got my other two here. This is The Barmaid, the Pelican and the Sea, which came out August last year, and then Overshare, which was the first one I ever did, and this came out in, I think it was like April 2021. Very different sized collections. This is the biggest one yet. So you can see like how much work I have actually put into this. But you can also buy these two combined. So the second like half of this is Overshare. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done a live show. I'm a little bit rusty. It's all a little bit weird, but we move. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Money Doesn't Love You. I'm going to talk about how the collection started. I have nagged my friends and family for the last couple of weeks to ask me questions that I'm going to answer, because if nobody comes on now, I haven't done YouTube for so long, I don't expect this to get into many people's feeds. Then I would just have no questions awkwardly. So I have got a bunch of questions. I'm going to do a reading, so you can come along and listen to some of the poems. I have posted some over the last couple of weeks, like I've said, just to try and get the word out a little bit. But I'm going to read some more today. I don't know how many, we'll see how it all goes. And then if there are any people watching who want to ask me further questions that I haven't answered already, by that point, you will have that opportunity. I have got some cupcakes to celebrate as well. I'm not going to eat them on air because I will just make a mess. But I've saved these all day. I've wanted to eat them since they came into my possession, and I haven't because I wanted to show you them. But how cool are they? So the one in the top middle says Money Doesn't Love You, and then they all match the book cover, and then the little book cover on them as well. I think it's very, very cute. Oh dear. So let me just close them and let's get started with some poetry, shall we? So first off, I will talk about Money Doesn't Love You and where it came from. So this started back in, it must have been July. Everyone knows that I just write poems to deal with things and make sense of my emotions and how I'm feeling and just get into grips with things. So I went through a breakup in July, started writing poems like I always do, always writing poems about boys. And then very, very quickly after that, we're talking, I think it was like 2.5 weeks. It was very, very quick. Somebody who mattered a lot to me passed away. And then within the same like 6 months, I went through another breakup. So that is basically this collection. It is about like just the most chaotic 6-ish months that you could possibly imagine. It is about other things that happened in there as well. I find someone who is very open, but I find it really hard to talk about anything quite deep. So you might think, oh my God, she talks like she overshares. That's why that poetry collection was called Overshare. But anything like more than just boys make me sad is very difficult for me to talk about. So there were several other things that happened like within this 6 months that I talk about in here, that like not even my best friends know about. So this is how I processed it all. And the poetry collection originally was like coming together as just being about that breakup and the things that I lost in that breakup. And then when the other person passed away, I could see like two sides of a book. And then when the third one came around, like it was suddenly like something clicked. Like suddenly it was like, this is a 3-part book. And as I was writing it, it very, very quickly like just became about grief. I didn't notice until I compiled it all together to see if I had enough poems for a new collection that actually you can see all of the stages of grief like on the page. So if you don't know the stages of grief, they are anger, denial, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. Not necessarily in that order, and I will go through the order of this with you as well. My sister is in the room, and I might have to give out orders because I'm thinking we might have to close that curtain. If that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, so we'll talk about like the order of things. And it just became one of those like fully fleshed out like collections, just so organically. My therapist says there is a 6th stage of grief, which is purpose, and that this is my purpose. So that is the main background of this. I want to get into a couple of poems and then we will get into some questions. Like I said, I've forgotten how to work YouTube, so I actually can't see any comments right now, whether any are coming in. But if you do have comments, like Zoe, you're in charge of the comments. If any come in, just let me know any questions, and we'll have a Q&A at the end. So let's get right into the poems. I'm going to start with the opening poem. Now, I think it's really important for me to, before I start these poems, to like just say, I don't think this is my best collection. I don't think these are my greatest poems. But everything that is in here, every poem that made it for a reason. And the reason that this one made it into the collection is because I liked the title of it and wanted to use it as the title of the collection. So this is Money Doesn't Love You. I gave you my love with open hands. You gave me work, demands and plans. I begged for time, not gifts nor gold, but warmth's worth more when nights grow cold. You'll buy the car, the place, the view, but none of that will comfort you. Success may come, maybe fortune too, but money doesn't love you. You'll hold the keys, ignore the past, too proud to chase what didn't last. And one day when the quiet bites, you'll trade your wealth for softer nights. But love won't wait, it won't rewind. It left while you were chasing blind. I hope the prophets fill the space where once I stood in your embrace. And when you've grown old, sat atop your throne of gold, you'll realise you are all alone and money doesn't love you. So that was one of the earliest poems that I wrote. And like I said, I don't think it's the greatest poem in the world, but I think it really sets up this collection, what it's about, what I was feeling, and why the collection is called Money Doesn't Love You. I have a few poems that are my favourites, and I don't know whether they're the ones I want to read or if I want you to buy the book so you get to them. But I'm going to read a couple more. There are a couple really niche ones that I think it's like quite hard to read aloud because I don't think if I just read them to you, you would understand, which probably is a weakness of the collection, but yeah. Okay. Let's read I Wish You Well. I really like the tone of this one. I wish you well. No, really, I do. May every foolish scheme come true. The stocks, the scams, the schemes that fail, the sure thing deals, that'll surely derail. You chase each gamble with endless flair, as if luck owed you a special share. May property deals line up in rows, each dream mansion that never shows. You'll brag of 50 grand in gain, while your bank account stays much the same. And perhaps that anime wife of yours will finally walk through your deluded doors. For children you boast as if on demand, yet no partner, no plan, just castles of sand. At 36 it's a little too late, but delusion at least means you've time to wait. Imagined family portraits of a life so grand, while reality slips through your hands. I think of your mother who worked to the bone to raise you up, to give you a home. Her love was fierce, her labour vast, and you repay by always coming in last. She gave you everything, yet here you stand, a monument to being utterly unmanned. Still, here's to your future, hollow and bright, a kingdom of nonsense built overnight. I'll raise a glass as your towers fall, your schemes unravel till there's nothing at all. All the towers, the claims, the grand parade, turn to dust in the circus you made. Your empire of nonsense was never crowned, just you, pathetic, when no one's around. And the reason I've read that one is I think that is the first poem that really shows anger in this collection. The first part probably looks more at like denial of that I loved you, why is this happening kind of thing, or maybe that hope of going back. But it's at this point really that the really bitter anger shines through, because I think there is some like normal anger to be expected, but it's a process. And I do think it got to a point with this collection where some of these poems are a bit unhinged. I am going to read the Owlbear, which is one that I don't think will make a lot of sense. And I probably shouldn't have included it, but I'm going to anyway. So, like I said, it's called The Owlbear. I think the Owlbear was the end of us. You sold it, but you didn't make it. So the money you took is mine. But you felt like you earned it. You weren't going to give me it at all. Your mother had to tell you it was only fair. Man, you're 36. I bought the model and painted it too. Why the fuck do you think I owed you? There are no ethical billionaires. I told you this once to be met with blank stares. This is how it starts. Exploitation of labour that only ends up in your favour. So yeah. I did a reading of Porcelain Boy on Instagram, so I'm not going to do one again. I think we will do 2 more maybe from this section. This is one of my favourites of this collection. It was, I think, my favourite for a long time until one of the ones that I wrote like towards the end of the collection. Again, which I've already performed on Instagram. This is The Waste and the Worthy. What a waste. A bitter taste. 18 months of nothing. All those words hollow, like drums beating in a room with no walls. You can't talk, you can't feel, you can't see past your own shadow. Everything is you, and the whole world bows to you. I loved, I stayed, I burned, while you took and took. A thief in daylight, smiling at the sun while the good ones fall. Quiet, unheard, gone. You breathe air, I want to choke. You take space, I want to burn, and still I rage. Still I scream at the sky at the unfairness of it all, the way the best vanish and the worthless thrive. No growth, no change, no heart in your chest, just the echoing of excuses, and I want to hurl them at you, scream them until your ears bleed, but it's not enough. It will never be enough. Everything I gave, everything I built, tossed aside like it was nothing, like I was nothing, and the world just keeps spinning, and the good ones die, and you keep walking, empty-handed, empty-eyed, a void, a shadow of humanity. And the good ones are gone, their laughter turned to dust, their love and light snuffed out, while the hollow wander breathing. And the world forgets the quiet heroes, the bright ones, the ones who mattered most. And yet the worst still linger here, burying the good ones we hold dear. Yeah, a lot of anger. Lot of anger. But I think that was the first one I wrote after person 2 died. Yeah, that's how I felt. Okay, now let's move on to part 2, which is money can't save you. So obviously, like, the theme of that first one was about putting like money before people, and the people who love you and the people who are around you. Money can't save you is more about recognizing that there are like more important things, and that people might get the job that they've been trying to get for a really long time, or they might have the house that they wanted, but they're still not happy. It still can't save them. So there might be some trigger warnings for some of these. A lot of these are about death and suicide. But yeah, this is an emotional collection, so all of the breaks is just me like processing what I want to say, and filtering out what I probably shouldn't say. But yeah, so this first one is called Monday. Well, before I actually get to that, there are 3 very short poems at the start of this segment that are not really poems. I wouldn't say any of them are a fully fledged poem. They are just thoughts. They had to be there because one of them is called I wrote this the night you died. Like, I was writing this poem as the person was dying. So I didn't feel like I could release this collection without including that one. And then I obviously just had a few broken thoughts about that as I was coming to terms with it. So one of those is called Monday. I was writing you a poem as you lay dying, or I was sat in the car talking about coming to see you. Both happened on the Monday. So that's just like a really short, just snapshot, I think, of how my brain worked. One of my longest ever poems is in here as well. I'm not going to read this one either because I will cry. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat it. I will cry. And it's 3 pages. Like, that is a long poem. It is called You Saved My Life That Night, and I think it's a really important poem. It's another one that I don't think is a particularly strong poem. It is one that I think I pretty much wrote in one go, just putting everything onto the page. It's my favourite type of poem to write, which is just narrative, taking a memory and then just writing it through. It's actually very similar in style to the ones in The Barmaid, The Pelican and the Sea, which is fitting because a lot of them are about the same person. But those kind of poems are like therapy to me, and I really love that poem. So yeah, I don't want to read it out and get backlash. I'm going to start with, that's not the right poem. I will never be okay again, because this poem I wrote for a very specific reason. This was never meant to be like a collection. This was a eulogy. Is that what it is? Yeah, a eulogy.
I think so.
I wrote it. I couldn't attend that person's funeral, which was devastating. I had surgery the day before. So I had to mark it in my own way. So what I did is I wrote this poem. I got some dried petals, and on a piece of dissolvable paper I wrote the poem, and I put that piece of paper and some petals into the sea, said the poem out loud as it obviously like dissolved and the flowers disappeared. So it was really purposeful. And yeah, like I said, was never meant to be in a collection, but it was important. So I will never be okay again. not with the way I lost you, not with how the world exists without you, not with how you left it all behind. But I will be okay with this, with how I grieve you, with how my love perseveres. I will carry it forever, and you will never be gone as long as you live in my memory. I will never be okay again. I will be changed, and I will be okay with that. So, yeah. In my ARC copy, I have a poem called Now and Then. Fun fact, I'm not going to read it because this poem is no longer in the collection, but a poem called Now and Then is in the collection, and I wrote that last week. I had to have the final documents submitted by Friday, and I finished that poem on the Thursday. So when you get to that one, just know it was a very last minute addition to the collection. And for that reason, I think it's a great example of like how everything that happened last year affected me. It's gone in this section of the book, but parts of it, it's all over the place. It's called Now and Then. So it's like flashing back between things that happened then, things that are happening now, how I feel, how those feelings like attach to different situations now. It's a really interesting poem if you look at it from that perspective. So yeah, just wanted to raise that. I think the next poem that I will read from this section is called If God Stood Before Me. This kind of highlights again the anger I was feeling, the denial I was feeling, and the bargaining part of grieving. I think the other two are kind of like depression, but this one is very much in that bargaining stage, as well as anger. If God stood before me and said, I'll bring him back, he'll walk this earth in peace again, but you must trade another and never see him, never speak his name, never share the air he breathes. I would. 1,000 times over, I would. The world was better with him in it. The light shone brighter, the hours were less cruel, and even if I never knew the sound of his laughter again, it would be enough to know that somewhere he still smiled. And that is a poem that I think is also very much a core of this collection. As we get later on into it, you will see how there are echoes of that poem in other things that I've written. So I think the last poem I'm going to read from this section is All the Right Things. This isn't about anybody other than myself. If you know anything about me at all, I have bipolar disorder. I have lived with my diagnosis for 12 years, but I've obviously had it for longer. I have become very experienced, I guess, in the right things to do when you are depressed, which I was during a lot of this. Let's see what I have to say for myself. They say that it's a mindset, that to beat depression you need to go out and get yourself well. Wellness won't find you wasting away in bed under covers on the couch. Those are the times you're going to regret. I'm going to the gym, ready, set, going for a swim. I'm eating all my greens and bowls full of raspberries. I'm trying to convince myself I'm still powering on with work, crying out for help. I'm doing things I love, journaling and writing poems, trying to let it out. But every page just echoes the same familiar doubt. I'm travelling solo, facing my fears, even though I'm playing games a bit too much. I take my medication, maybe miss a dose or two. I'm going to therapy. I'm spilling my soul to a stranger, paying for unresolved judgment. I'm putting on a brave face, laughing when I should. I'm crying in the quiet moments, the way anyone else would. I don't drink, I don't smoke, though sometimes I need an outlet. I get my hours of sleep, though it's not always mine to keep. But my brain just rejects my attempts to reset. I felt like this for half my life, 15 years of pain and strife. I've given up on recovery. I'm ignoring the myth of stability. I'm doing everything right, and yet I've never felt less like me. So I wrote that like right at the beginning of this year. That's a lie. I reference going away. I wrote this one in April, when I was probably at my lowest that I had been in a really long time. And I was getting so frustrated because I wanted to feel okay. And I don't know if I was like projecting that other people were thinking, oh my God, just get over yourself. But I was doing so much to try and feel better and it just wasn't working. So that's why I wrote that one. And let's get on to the last section. Money won't replace you. Unintentionally, the longest part of the collection. Also a collection that got the most additions, like towards the end, because I just decided that I wanted to share them. So the reason it's called Money Won't Replace You is because in this relationship there was a lot of tension over money, about me having more of it and being able, like, the provider and all that kind of thing. And the fact that I have more money now and I'm not with them. But it doesn't matter, like I said in the beginning, it doesn't matter how much money you have, like, people are more important. I've always been one of those people that really just believes that. I was having a conversation with my dad the other day. He was joking about he was like, oh, I'm just going to book a big holiday and spend your inheritance. And I firmly believe that my inheritance is just the money left over when he dies. Like, when you see people whinging about their parents spending their inheritance, it's their money. If they're alive, it's their money. Like, my dad could leave me 50p, I don't care. So yeah, that's my belief of money as a whole. Anyway, a poem I'm not going to read, but I will give you some background on, is Where the Light Begins. I have been accused of never writing a happy poem. My sister, who is sat right over there, will often say to me, can you just write a happy poem? I wrote a happy poem. It's not happy anymore, but it was written as a happy poem. So I kept it in because it's the first one that I've ever written. Oh, now it's just which of these poems do I read and do I not read? I have my favourites, obviously. I'm going to read this one, which is called Somewhere. I think the reason I'm reading this one is it kind of it's the one that follows on from oh my gosh, what was it called? If God Stood Before Me. And hopefully you can recognise, like, the difference. So it's called Somewhere. You wake beneath the same sky I cannot see. Pour coffee into a mug I'll never touch. Step into mornings that do not bear my name. Your shoes still wear down on pavements. Your lungs still breathe in air, and let it go. Somewhere a room fills with your presence, unaware how fortunate it is. At least you are somewhere. I have learned the sound of silence that does not belong in crowded rooms. An empty chair, a voice imagined but ended mid-breath. Time folding in on itself like a burnt page, edges curling where a future should have been. No elsewhere, no later, no again. At least you are somewhere. I can live with distance, with not knowing which streets remember you, or hearing laughter catching in your throat. What dreams carry you forward without me in them? I can live with my chapter ending. I cannot live with the whole book ending there. Tonight, somewhere I will never stand again, you will breathe, and the world will make space for it. That is enough to break me. That is enough to keep me here. At least you're somewhere. Somewhere is better than nowhere. So, yeah, I really like that one. I have a couple of others that have, like, a similar concept, like At Least You're Alive, but I guess that was also kind of like my bargaining with that separation as well. So I just kept them all in because I do like them. This is another one that is quite similar. No, it's not. This is actually quite different. I remember this is quite different. I'm going to read it. This is Where Is Your Sunshine? You said the world was closing in. The sky hung low with expectation. clouds heavy with blame. You walked like Atlas, trembling, convinced you held it alone. No one asked you to carry it. No one handed you the heavens. You reached up and claimed them as your own. You called it pressure, the weight of the atmosphere, the pull of every star, yet it was your own gravity dragging your world down. You said you couldn't breathe, that the air itself was judging you, thin with disappointment. But you were the one tightening your ribs, measuring each exhale, deciding it wasn't enough. And when something great appeared, a small sun at your shoulder, light without demand, you flinched. Too bright, you said, too much expectation under sunbeams, too dangerous to orbit. You pushed it away, watched it drift beyond your horizon. You told yourself the clouds had cleared. No more heat, no more pressure, nothing left to hold. But now the world feels wider and colder. The clouds still hang low, only quieter. Does the sky weigh less now, or did you just send away the only light that made it easier to carry? Scottish Sunbeams is my favourite poem of the whole collection. So even though I've skipped over the other ones that I've already read on Instagram, I'm reading it because it's my favourite. So, Scottish Sunbeams. I hear you've landed on your feet. I guess I'll never get to meet the person I always knew you'd grow to be. I hope one day I'll see him, asked in Scottish Sunbeams, pouring hot milk into takeaway cups. Maybe I'll say something, probably not, I'll hang back, observe like a secret stalker, with a grin on her face. I hope you go home, alone, back to a place you finally call your own, and maybe think of me. I hope your daughter dances and you keep feeling pride, that you finally learn to smile and stop trying to hide. I still think about you daily and wish I was allowed to say I'm proud. Life had different plans for us. I trudged through English summers, knowing if you called, that long drive would bring me home. So this is where we're at the stage of grief of acceptance, where things just are. You don't have any control over them. You can't change them. You don't necessarily even have to be happy with it or think it's okay. You've just learned that's how it is. So that's my favourite thing about that one, like the fact that you can still just be happy for somebody, even though they're not in your life, and just hope for the best, even though you've got no way of knowing if they are okay or not. Quick drink. It's quite dehydrating reading poems. Okay. I've ruined my book. Oh dear. Right, what else have we got? I've just mentioned about acceptance, and let's go back to a poem that is about not accepting. This is Text I'll Never Send. My blistered thumbs are bloody. I miss you. Typed too many times, but I've never sent the message. 2 silent blue ticks would kill me. 1 loud grey tick would cremate me. Any words back would build a monument to you. Instead, I silence myself, hoping you can read my mind, and maybe you do the same. So we are getting to the end of the collection now. I do have two. I've got 2 here, and I can only read one of them. And I don't know which one I should go for. I'm Alive or Amen. These 2 poems, before I choose which one to read, these 2 poems are about acceptance, but 2 different types of acceptance. One is about acceptance of myself and who I am. The other is about the acceptance of a relationship ending. Do you know what? Fuck it. Let's just read both of them. Let's read both of them. Okay. So, first of all is I'm Alive. I wrote this sat on top of a cliff overlooking the sea. It was when I was coming out of my depressive episode. It's when I finally started to enjoy life again. And gratitude, I think, is the best way for me just to describe this. There's beauty in this, in the simplicity of just existing, in listening to the waves brushing sand, in knowing there's a tomorrow. I feel heat prickling my skin, the wind disturbing my ear, but not hurting it now. I have etched new memories into my skin, in ink this time instead of blades. I feel safe again, safe breathing in fresh air, safe in the knowledge that my love once mattered, even if it never will again. Maybe it's enough that I'm alive. I'm alone, but I've always have been. I'm alone, but I know how to be on my own. And like the moon knows the sun, I know we exist together, even if we cannot be together in this life. So yeah, that's that one. Very insightful, that's that one. But I really enjoy that one. They've got a mouse. The cats are having my life. That's the third one today. Okay. They're clearly hungry because I'm a bad mom. But yeah, so there's like references in that are very like, if you don't know me, you don't understand it. So the wind disturbing my ear but not hurting it now. I had a perforated eardrum for 17 years. I couldn't deal with wind. It was so painful, and I can now because I got it fixed. So it was all these little things that I was grateful for that maybe don't sound that big of a deal, but they are. And let's finish off with Amen. This was very intentionally written. I like to very intentionally write a last poem. It wasn't the last one that I did write, but it was supposed to be. That's why it's called Amen. You say Amen at the end of a prayer. The entire thing really is like me pleading to be okay again when all this stuff has happened. So, Amen. Tonight it's time to snuff out the candlelight. I have observed the flickering of flames with a virtuous vigil of hope and desire. Now, as the wick's surrender grows near, I recall memories of you like verses I once feared. I have prayed to the flame whilst uttering your name, whilst praying for your salvation and grace, and your demons to free you into my embrace. My oath to you would burn if broken, and the smoke would settle on shattered dreams. I could carry this flame forever, but I've burned this candle at both ends, and the wick urges to give up on you. I have to accept you'll never be cast in the shadow or kneeling beside me in worship again. So I'll stop asking when, as the candle grows low. You once honoured me as your safe space, said you didn't mean we should never speak again, yet we have never spoken since. That lesson came with the lull of a sermon. I still send sweet nothings in nighttime prayers, but the silence will outlast the candle, and I confess that this is more than I can handle. When at last I blow the candle out tonight, the smoke will curl like words I once spoke before vanishing like the hope of us. Let the wax melt our words into nothingness, and our story will finally be over, though it will never depart my soul. I told you I was not going anywhere, and you know where you can find me. But in the darkness comes the peace. I'll close the book and say amen, and stop believing you'll come again. So, you've had a good chunk of poems read out to you there. I think I've been going for a good half hour. So I do have some questions. This was only meant to go until 8 o'clock, so I was trying to like answer some of the questions while I was reading. But we will have a little look at my list, and I will tell you the answers to some of them. So I've got 10 questions in total. These are ones that friends and family have sent me work colleagues, and I have kind of like, a lot of them were the same question, so I've kind of like reworded them to sound a bit more interview style because I'm full of myself. Right, anyway, so this collection began as a collection of breakup poems. At what point did you realise it had become something bigger? And that alongside the question, why those section titles, Money Doesn't Love You, Money Can't Save You, and Money Won't Replace You, I've already kind of answered. But like just being more specific about the when I realised it was something bigger, I think it was just when I was putting it all together, which must have been end of March, beginning of April. I designed the cover before I went to Prague, which was the 10th of April. So it was sometime before then. I realised it was about grief as a whole, like much later, like within the last few weeks. And within the last few weeks is when I've realised, as I've been finally editing it and, you know, making sure it was ready for release, that's when I've realised, oh my God, like this this collection only exists as a collection. This isn't like individual poems. Like there are poems in there that wouldn't exist without the poems that I'd written earlier. Like when I read If God Stood Before Me and Somewhere, like the threads are there, and the way that when it comes to the real life grief, you know, that that I felt so much anger towards that breakup because that person died. And like it was projection, of course it was projection, but that was me understanding grief and dealing with all of these things that were happening in a way that I could understand at the time. And my understanding of grief, like since then, completely different. Partly because of therapy. Go to therapy, guys. But yeah, my understanding of grief completely different. So Aoife asked me if writing these poems would help me like deal with grief in the future, and I think really they've taught me what grief is, so that I'm probably more prepared in future. But also I know that writing poems does help me. So yeah. One of the recurring ideas in the book is that acceptance isn't the same as moving on. What does acceptance actually mean to you? So I think I've discussed that as well, really. Acceptance to me isn't being okay with something, it isn't being happy with a situation. It's sitting back and acknowledging, actually, that's something I don't want. I would prefer it if this other thing was the path we were going down, but I don't have a choice and I've got to accept it. And I can either break down or I can get on with it and accept that that's the way it is and be happy, as happy as I can. That's what it is to me. Somewhere ends with the line. I asked people specifically for questions about specific poems, which was quite hard because I didn't share all of them. So I've got a couple of questions about specific poems. Somewhere ends with the line, somewhere is better than nowhere. Is this the closest the collection comes to peace? And I would say yes, but also the line in I'm alive, that's just maybe it's enough that I'm alive. Those two like ideas, they're kind of what I was getting at when I was talking about acceptance and getting to acceptance. Yeah, it's like a final thought. Okay, a poem that I didn't read out because I thought maybe it would be a bit too much. But I will just read the title and you'll understand why. I write poems wishing you were dead. is a title that some readers might find shocking. Were you ever afraid of being misunderstood, and why include it anywhere? And the answer to that one is yes. I ummed and ahed a lot about putting that one in. Again, it's one of those anger poems, but it also came from the fact that somebody was watching my Instagram stories after a year of not. And I was just getting annoyed, and I didn't want them to think that. Well, one of my friends said, you do realise that they're going to think those poems are about them, and I was posting the nice ones. So I wrote that poem as a response to that. I don't actually wish them dead, of course, but it harkens back to what I was saying about that if God stood before us, the worthy and the waste. You know, part of grief is that bargaining and making deals with the devil, let's say. So yeah, it's shocking. And it probably is misunderstood, but I checked with a lot of people about whether or not to put it in, and everyone said put it in, so that's why it's in there. And I guess that kind of leads me on to questions about, like, did anything not make the cut, or how did you decide what did and didn't make the cut? So I do have like some boundaries about what goes in, so I've never named somebody. One of my former colleagues I met up for drinks with a couple of weeks ago, and they referred to me as West Cumbria's answer to Taylor Swift, which I love, of course I do. But I've never named anybody. And also, like, none of the poems are directly about anyone. They're just not really, apart from the ones that narrate a very specific event. Like, not every single line is how I feel. Like, they're the inspiration, perhaps, and that experience I had is the inspiration. But there's very few of them that it's like, everything I've said in this poem is directly about you and means and is how I feel. But I never named names, and that actually killed me because there is a poem that I wrote that does name somebody, because their name is, it was a Lost Boys poem. I think there are only 4 characters in Peter Pan that have a name, and there are 2 people that join the Lost Boys temporarily, and one of their names was shared. And I wrote this poem, and I love the poem. I think it's one of my better poems, which makes it so annoying because I just can't include it because I can't use the name. That's not fair on that person. It's not fair on anybody else who might see it that knows that person. It's just not fair. It's like in a similar vein to like Dear John by Taylor Swift, to bring it back to like my West Cumbria's Taylor Swift. You know, she can claim it's not about him because a Dear John letter is a real thing that predates her being with John Mayer. Why would I write that poem without knowing that person? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Maybe not. Maybe it'll see the light of day again in like 20 years' time when things are different. But no. So I never include people's names. I feel like there was maybe another boundary I was thinking of when I wanted to answer this question, but I can't think of any in particular. My last collection had a poem called We Were Fucking in the Backseat of My Car. So, like, it's not even a case of X or R rated or whatever, 18 plus content. I just, yeah, I do everything except name people. I probably wouldn't share people's secrets either. Oh yeah, it was the next question anyway. Was there anything you chose not to include because it felt too exposing, too cruel, or too unhinged? There are some really personal poems in there, like I said at the beginning, that I haven't even like spoke to my best friends about. And I've obscured them. Like, I don't think they'd realise that that poem was about a particular thing. So, yeah, I guess that's it. Too cruel. Things that I cannot talk about, I haven't included. And if readers walk away remembering only one thing from Money Doesn't Love You, what do you hope it is? So what I want is for people to understand that grief is not linear, which we all know, but grief is also a process that we have to go through, and there are going to be moments where we are completely unhinged. People think we're absolutely bonkers. People are going to look at that and think, why are you so sad over that thing that doesn't involve you in any way, shape, or form? But I think the fact of the matter is that only you know how you feel about something and why you feel that way about something. And there are always going to be things that happened that people are not aware of. That can be really hard to deal with when somebody dies. Because that person can no longer defend themselves. And for me, it doesn't feel fair to talk about things that somebody can't defend or people they can't counter. So I can only talk about what I experience and how I feel. And if other people think that it doesn't make sense, or I'm not going to tell them. Do you get what I mean? Do it make sense? I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I feel. Anyway, that is where I am going to wrap up. I've answered all my questions. I can do some quick fire things that I've posted on Instagram, if people aren't aware of them already. So my favourites in the collection are Scottish Sunbeams, which I've told you is my all-time favourite. The Waste and the Worthy. I can't remember what the third one that I said was my favourite. Let me quickly scan the contents page. This is my biggest collection as well, so it's got the most poems. Did I say Porcelain Boy, potentially? I think I might have done. But yeah. And then my favourite titles, which are not necessarily my favourite poems, are I Write Poems Wishing You Were Dead. I think it's a great title. And I Go to Kate for Haircuts. And the other one is it's a long one. I like the long ones that might be a bit confusing or shocking. Oh, You Silly Sausage Lol. Those are my favourite titles, if not my favourite poems. And if I could, if I had to remove one poem right now, I would probably remove Life is Too Short. I don't think that's a great poem, but it fit that theme, that section of somebody dying at the age of 25. Any other quick fires? Can you think of any quick fires that you would ask if you could? No? Are there any comments? No, didn't think so. Okay, so we will wrap that up then. Thank you for watching, those of you who joined. I saw the numbers changing as we went, so I know there was people here. I wasn't just talking to myself. But yeah, so you can get Money Doesn't Love You on Amazon. I will leave a link down below, so go and check that out. It's on ebook and in paperback, and yeah, I'm so happy. So I'm gonna go and finish my McDonald's that I started an hour ago. And thank you very much for your support as always. Bye.